Hello everybody and welcome to Organian's Puzzle Box. In today's video we're going to explore how to use displacement mapping with some very basic geometry to create some really interesting shapes. Like you can see in this scene over here, I've got two towers and this stylized house. Basically it takes about 30 to 40 minutes per model in order to get it done. We'll use Substance Painter and its displacement mapping capabilities, and then we'll also use Blender to apply that displacement mapping to these models and then convert that into actual geometry that you can use in your scene. I would say that this workflow is all about speed and getting your concepts put together quite easily. It doesn't only work for stylized concepts, it also works for whatever else you want to use it in, wherever displacement mapping comes into it comes into its own. And also what I would like to say is that these assets that I'm using in here, the textures that I'll be using in this tutorial, you can find them on Substance Source. So if you got access to that, you can download them and then do your own model. But other than that, you can just get textures from an online library like Substance Share and so on. So without any further delay, let's just get to it, and we'll start the tutorial now. So see you in just a second. So we'll start off in Blender, where we basically want to create our basic mesh that we're going to apply textures later on to use the displacement maps on. So this tower, I'm going to build it right about here at the back of the house. So I'm just going to shift right click to put my 3D cursor over here so I can actually start putting the mesh in. So press Shift A, go to mesh, and we'll start off with a cylinder. Now this is our basic cylinder. I'm just going to move it basically into position. So if you move into one direction and you press the middle mouse button, this will basically make that mesh move in the up and down in the direction that you're actually going. So it's locked to that. I'm just going to drop it around here for now. I'm going to press S on the keyboard to scale it up a little bit. So maybe something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think that will do just fine. Well, actually, let's just increase the size a bit more, and then G and middle mouse button to go up. So that's where we want to basically add our mesh. Okay, now we just need to start editing this piece. So I'm just going to press Tab on the keyboard to go into edit mode, then press number 3 to go into face mode. And we basically want to press W to be in selection mode, and we'll just select that face up there, press X, delete the face, and then underneath as well, delete the face. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to duplicate this cylinder and take it, move it forward. So, but before we do that, we want to make sure that it's actually completed. So go into Edge mode by pressing 2 on the keyboard. By holding Alt, just press on the this edge, which will select the whole thing, and then we'll press E to extrude, and then I'm going to press S on the keyboard to scale. So we're going to scale this inward a little bit, and then press G on the keyboard and press middle mouse button. Press middle mouse button to move it upwards. The reason for that is because we want our tower sort of connect seamlessly. You probably can see it here, but it's not as seamless as what I wanted it to be. But I'm going to make sure this time around it's actually going to be done better. Right. Okay. So we've got that in place. The next thing we want to do is we want to add some loops. So I'm basically gonna press the loop cut. Well, actually, before we do any loops, let's first UV unwrap this. So I'm just going to create another. I want to create another space, another working space over here. And the reason for that is because I want us to have as many of the UVs already done before we move, upwards. So while in edit mode, we'll go to edge. We'll basically click this edge, and actually with holding Alt, we'll click it again, so it goes. It basically selects the whole edge. We're going to change this viewport. We're going to change it to the UV editor, and we're going to right click on this one and just say mark seam. Now we've marked it. And then I'm going to press UV and, I'm going to press 3 on the keyboard, select all polygons by pressing A on the keyboard, and then I'll press the UV option up here and the unwrap. And as you can see now, it's been unwrapped, but it's got this slight curve, and that's because we need to also unwrap it over here. So Alt click like that, right click, mark seam. Now you'll see, once we go back to polygon mode and select everything, when we press unwrap, this is what we get. This is the result that we get, which I'm fine with. Just going to press G on the keyboard to pull it out. So now this is basically, you know, on a very basic level, unwrapped. I'm just going to close this viewport now, and basically we're all still here. I'm just going to edit mode, just press A on the keyboard, so we got everything selected. Then go to mesh, shading, and smooth faces, and now you can see we've got we've got nice and smooth faces basically. Okay, so now with this mesh unwrapped and everything, we can now start duplicating it. So press, go out of edit mode by pressing tab, press Shift D, and now this has duplicated it. So we're moving upwards, pressing middle mouse button, and then we're just gonna put this over here, just like that. We may want to position it a bit so we get a better result. Something that will do just fine. This tower in particular, I'm probably gonna leave a bit smaller. So again, I'm just gonna press Shift D, G, G for moving, and then we're gonna go upwards. Something like that, and then just going to be a bit more different. I'm going to still make these sort of pillars over here, and that part keeping it, but well, actually let's just copy it entirely and just see what comes out with it. So press Shift D again, move it upwards, somewhere around there. And now what we want to do is we want to scale this basically. So we press tab on the keyboard, and then we go to edge mode, select this edge, and just move it upwards. Something like that should be fine. Select these edges and press X and delete all the edges. So we've only got, well, sorry, that's not going to be okay. We're going to go in polygon mode, Control Alt on the polygons, and then delete the faces. That's what we want here. Right, okay. So we want to create, I'm just going to drop this a little bit downward, something like that. We're going to have smaller pillars over here, basically. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is on this mesh over here, I'm just going to hide the house, just so we've got a bit more visibility as to what we're doing. Okay, so over here, I'm just going to add a door, just like we've got over on this side. One thing that I didn't do, unfortunately, I'm just going to have to do it now, is I haven't really added any loops. So I'm just going to add very equal loops on the whole mesh. Something like that should be fine. And the reason for this is we want our displacement to be quite, equal in terms of polygon. The way the polygons are being placed. So we're using the loop cut basically for all of this, so it should be quite straightforward. Shouldn't take us too long. So now I've got all these loops in, which is fine. I'm just going to now add some loops over on this one, and this will give us a better topology basically when we use a subdivision modifier. So now we're back to the ground level. So we want to add a door over here. I'm just going to go back to my select mode, and I'm going to go to faces, and I'm basically going to select these 3 faces, for example. Let's just bring in the house and see how that matches up. Now it's going to be too much in the house, so yeah, we want these over here. So we're going to press E on the keyboard to extrude, just like that, and then we're going to select these faces here and delete them. And then we're going to take these faces and extrude them out. Actually, deleting those faces is not going to work out for us because we need we need to have a face there, yeah? So that's fine, we'll just keep it that way. And now we want to add a sort of a door over here. So I'm just gonna select all of these like that and press E on the keyboard to extrude inwards. So now we've got our, you know, very simple door. Okay, now to move on to the other meshes, we want to create these pillars over here, don't we? So we're going to press tab on the keyboard, face mode again, and we want to select polygons. So every 2 polygons, we'll select 2 polygons and so on. So yeah, that should do it. Okay. So we've got these, and now we're going to press E on the keyboard and we'll extrude upwards. And we're also going to press S on the keyboard to scale inwards a little bit, just like that. So now we've got these columns in there as well, which is fine. If you want, you can detach the columns to, you know, animate them differently or do something else with them if you want to. For the time being, you know, I think this is okay. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is we want to work on this top. So press tab on the keyboard and we'll basically go to edge mode, select this edge, and what we want to do is we want to press E to extrude, press S to scale. So we want to scale inwards a little bit, like so, and then we want to extrude again and scale inwards yet again, like that. Now we want to go into edge mode. You know, we want to select some of these polygons again. So this is just depending on your style and whatever you want to do. You know, I'm just making a very basic shape for a stylized tower here. Nothing too fancy, nothing too great. So I think those should work. Okay, that's fine. What else do we want to do now? Well, basically on the the inside here, we want to work on this. So, you know, in edge mode, select this edge, extrude, scale inwards like so, and basically we're going to bridge those gaps. So if we start hiding some of these cylinders like that, this is going to be a lot easier. So we select, oh, sorry about that. We select this edge and that edge, and we'll press F on the keyboard, and that's causing a bridge, as you can see. I think it's also important, you see up here, for example, that you do the same sort of bridges when you close these gaps, because then you'll have a nice flow of your you know, mesh of your topology. The topology right now is very important because we're going to, you know, we need to unwrap it properly, and we also need to, I'm just going to have a triangle over here, it's fine. We're going to unwrap it properly, and we want to unwrap it properly, and we want to subdivide it and then decimate it later to a proper result. So I'm just going to keep on doing this like so. So now that's fully capped, and now we want to do the same thing for up here. I'm just gonna jump straight to that basically. So this is basically now done in terms of gapping those bridges. We want to do the same thing for this second cylinder. So we're just going to go into edit mode on it. Let's hide the other cylinder so we've got a clear view of what's going on. So what we want to first do is to detach these pillars basically. So we'll go into an orthographic side view. So you do that by holding Alt and scrolling around the scene. Then, you know, or you can use this gizmo at the top here, and it should be a lot easier. Go into face mode and then Alt Z on the keyboard to see through the mesh. So you can select the back face as well. We're just going to drag and drop, and now we've got all these polygons selected. And now we want to basically separate them. So we did this by pressing P on the keyboard and then pressing selection over here. So now we've got this separated basically. You can see it here as a new mesh. So I'm just going to hide it for now as we don't need it yet. And then I'm going to go back to my normal, you know, this is my normal cylinder that I was working on. As you can see, we've got these faces around, which are quite, you know, they're quite, you know, getting in the way a little bit. But we'll press Alt Z on the keyboard, we'll go to edge mode, and we'll select these edges, press F, You want to basically close the gaps between them. And then what we'll do is we'll basically add a loop to each of these, and we'll be able to connect them with the other side of the, the remaining vertex that's not currently connected to anything, the middle vertex over here. So we'll go into our loop cut, and we're gonna add a loop to whatever there's no no edge. So now that's done. I'm going to go into edge mode, go into selection, and want to select this first point, then the second point, and Alt-M on the keyboard. Press then the option at last, not at first. That will move the vertex from here to here, basically. So I'm going to do this for the rest of the side of the tower, and then we'll continue after that. Now with that done, we basically want to close these gaps like we did before. Now it would be nice to keep this sort of make sure you have a certain logic in your head as to how you're going to do these, so it makes sense more for when you UV unwrap it. So I'm just going to skip as to when this bridging is complete, and then we'll resume with our finishing, doing the final touches of the mesh and doing its UV unwrap. And then we'll move on to Substance Painted. So now that's all done, we want to start UV unwrapping. So we're just going to open another, another side over here, and we'll go to our UV editor. We're going to start with the mesh at the bottom and pressing tab to go into edit mode. Now we've got this door that we've added, so that's going to be the problem basically. We're just going to go into edge mode, and we're going to start to select these polygons over here. So you want to have them all selected, and then press U on the keyboard to unwrap it. So that's basically it, unwrapped over there. We now have these polygons on the side. I mean, these are all hard edges, so you do want to basically unwrap these and put them to the side on their own. Okay, so I've now unwrapped the side of the door as well. We then want to take these sides over here, again unwrap, unwrap. I mean, I like the blended style of unwrapping. It's quite quick, but I must say that it feels like it's lacking some other features that I'm used to have from previous packs. Now this could be just my my opinion on it. I'm sure other people have different opinions of it. But I find it to be very simplistic, which is fine. But at the same time, I find that to be a bit, might take away from the whole thing. So we've got these edges over here. I'm just gonna, I've got them now selected. I think they're the edges inside. So basically, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press X, X on the keyboard, and delete the faces because they were inside. The edges that we can, faces that we can't see. And I've also got these over here, which I'm going to delete as I don't need either. So now I've got everything unwrapped. We can just select everything, press the UV, and then just say Pack Islands. Now, as you can imagine, everything else, everything is not proportionate to, to our, nothing in there is proportionate. So I'm just going to press this button over here to make them a bit more proportionate. And then, unfortunately, I don't like the fact that they're, this is what's happening, and I don't like how Blender is handling that. I'm just going to select the walls, which is basically the most important thing. They need the most geometry. I'm going to press UV, and I'm going to say, pack this inside. And now I've got it stretched across as it should be. And I believe if I now take these and say pack inside, see, that's the problem. They just become quite big. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to select everything and just make them a tiny smaller. Basically, I'm not trying to make my UVs perfect, because the reason for that is I don't want to stretch this video too long either. So yeah, I'm just gonna drop this in here, and I think that's, we'll say that's done. We're gonna press tab. So this is now UV unwrapped. And with this model selected, let's go into our material over here and click new. So we now made a new material that's just this over here, you know, this mesh over here. We'll now move on to our second sort of material. One of the things that we want to do is I want this and these up here, I want them all to be one object. So I've just selected them both. I'm going to press Control J on the keyboard, and now they become one basically, which is fine. Now let's go to our model over here and the model on top. So both of these models, we want to have them on the same UV. So Control J again to make them into one material. So I've now, you know, gone to edit mode, and this is basically these are all the polygons that are inside there. So we've got a problem with this and the one underneath there. Well, the main problem is up here really. So I'm just going to go into selection and make sure I've got everything in here selected. Like so, and I think that's it. Yeah. And we want to basically do a cut through it. So I'm just going to go to my, you know, be in edit mode, I'm in edge mode, and I'm going to make sure that I select these. Press Alt Z to see through, and well, I want to just take this one, and this edge. Oh, sorry, this edge over here. Right click, and we'll say mark. Mark seam. Yeah. And now we're going to go and select all of this, and we'll unwrap it, which is now fine. The rest of it, you know, the rest of the mesh over here, these two are basically lying on top of each other, which is, you know, would be fine, but they're it's not ideal. So as hovering was over one of these elements, we'll just press L on the keyboard, and now that has selected the whole bottom part of the mesh. And we want each of these to be basically on their own in there, because they will want to have individual sort of details on top of it, you know, on each other. So we've got them in there. We're going to scale these down a little bit and just basically put them in here, like so. And now we've got this one. We'll put that in here as well again. Okay, so that'll be fine. We're now going to press tab to go out of edit mode, and we're going to give it another material. Okay, and I want to do these top two over here, which is a bit more tricky to basically unwrap. So let's just see to begin with what these are, what these elements are. So they're the sides here, so that's, you know, they're not specifically going to help us in any way. So in order to basically unwrap this, since we have a lot of hard edges, you basically have to select these polygons in pairs, like so. And when you click unwrap, you'll basically extract them from you know, from the mesh, and you'll have your UV. So when I press U over here, these are basically them. So I'm just going to put them to a side, and you have to do this for, you know, everything else really, this in the same way. So for example, up here, you know, for example, this, you may want to go into selection mode, into this circle selection mode, and holding shift and just basically going around selecting all of these like so, because you want to have all of that into a one UV island. So like that. Oh, sorry, you don't want to select anything else, you just want these. See, I've already selected a few elements there that I didn't want, but it's fine. I'm just holding control, I'm just going to paint over that to eliminate it. And now I'm going to right click and basically unwrap, and that's my mesh over there, which for some reason hasn't unwrapped the way I wanted it, but yeah, very interesting. I think it's because I had a seam over here, which is fine, don't worry about that. This is all procedurally generated, so I'm not, you know, won't really have any problems with it. You may want to basically have all of this into one mesh. So, like so, that's fine. and then you want to do these elements as well, again individually. So I'm going to skip that. I'm going to skip over to the end. As I've said, just select them as elements and unwrap them, and that's fine. You'll be okay with that. Don't worry. So now our entire, basically our entire mesh is unwrapped, and you know every element in there, and we want to yet again, you know, go over here and add a new material to this as well. I'm going to make a new collection, and I'm going to take all of these elements that we've made, these you know 3 elements that we have, and I'm going to drop them into this collection. And I want to rename them as well, so we can, you know, tower. Let's call it tower 1 bottom, and then I've got this over here, which is basically tower 1 top, and then we've got this one tower 1 middle, which is fine. So at least we now know basically when we look at this what each of these segments represent. Okay, so we've got them made, and now it's time to basically bring them over into Substance Painter. Before we do that, we need to add a subdivision modifier to them. So I'm just going to close this this viewport. I am now going to start, you know, I'm going to hide the other collection. I don't need it. I'm going to hide the lights as well. So we're basically, you know, just seeing this tower only. So now, let's start with the subdivision. So when we go up over here, we're going to a add modifier, and we're going to add a subdivision surface. As you can see, it's now already started to destroy our, you know, the complexity of our mesh. Because it's trying to smooth everything out. So we're going to add a few more segments to it. The most important part of all of this is how does the wireframe sort of look when we subdivide. So I'm just going to click in the viewport, and we're going to go to, let's just have wireframe active and have a look. Yeah, I mean, this looks about right. Well, actually, I'm just going to keep it to 4 subdivision levels. That should be fine. And now let's just deactivate the wireframe so we can see the simplistic frame, so to speak. And now we're going to go into edit. Well, we are already in edit mode. We're just going to take our loop cut, and we're going to start adding some loops. And the reason for this is going to help maintain the shape of our mesh. So as you can see, as I'm dropping loops in here, basically everything is going to look a lot sharper, as it should be. So, you know, the more you add, the more sort of detail you're gonna be getting out of this, which is very, very important. Okay, so that should work just fine. As you can see, it's quite sharp. We're going to go to our tower middle, and this again we're going to add a subdivision surface. Let's just have a look how many we added there. So 4 times, and we want to do the same thing here. We want to go to 4 times. Now, because this is a lot higher poly, a lot more simplistic geometry, then this is not really going to have the same effect as before. But just to be safe, I would basically want to add over here and over here. Well, no, that's it. Yeah, just over there, just to help with this, basically, just to help with this transition over here. Right, and now we'll move on to the last mesh. Again, subdivision surface. You can see this is really being affected now. So we want to add quite a bit already. And let's just increase this to 4 levels. And again, we want to add to these pillars the same thing. This is in this workflow. There are definitely better ways to, you know, sort of prepare for this in time, so you don't have to do them again later on. As right now, you can see I'm just going around, just adding subdivisions just to get a better result. So, for example, you want to do this, or you want to do one on the sides as well, and that's going to help as well to maintain the shape. And it's really all about how much you want to maintain the shape. So yeah, about that, let's have a look. I think that's going to be okay. Yeah, definitely, you know, it looks quite nice. We may want to add a bit more over here, so I've just added 1, and I'm thinking of doing that. So basically it maintains that tower sort of shape a bit more. So yeah, this is basically it. We've got a tower ready now for taking into Substance Painter. I'm just going to go into wireframe mode so we can have a look. This is our wireframe complexity. This is basically, we would probably need to subdivide this again later on, but at the minute we're going to leave it the same this way, and in Substance Painter we're going to use with a height map, with displacement maps, we're going to add a bit of tessellation in there as well, just to see better results. I mean, the chance of backfiring over here is quite high. You may take this mesh over into Substance Painter and then you realize you don't have enough geometry to work with, and then you're going to have to come back in here, increase the subdivisions, and then take it back into Substance Painter. So I am going to take the wireframe out. We got our 3 elements over here. We want to now export them. So go to File, Export as FBX. I'm just going to make a new folder, Tower Tutorial, I'm gonna call it. So I think it's actually gone into Tower Tutorial. I hope it did go into Tower Tutorial. I'm just gonna go over and have a look. Tower Tutorial, I don't see anything in it. So I don't think it went in there. Okay, right, we made a folder, but we haven't really. Okay, let's just go back to File, Export, FBX. Make sure you've got selected object actually ticked in. Go into Tower Tutorial, and we're gonna call this Tower Substance Painter, so we know what this mesh is all about. Make sure in geometry you've got the apply modifiers ticked on, so it basically applies the modifiers that we haven't applied yet because we don't want to commit. And now we're just going to move into Substance Painter, so I'll resume the tutorial from there. So now we're in Substance Painter and it's time to basically bring our mesh in. I'm just going to move on to OpenGL because that's the better format for Blender. So you can see now the scene being loaded. We'll be able to see our texture list over here. So we've got material 11, 12, 13. We could have renamed these to actually fit the models, but it's fine. I like to work dirty. Right, so this is our UV over here based on the material that we select. So everything is okay. Just going to press F2 on the keyboard to go into full view. Going to delete these layers. So we're going to start with the bottom here. So like I've said to you, basically you want to get the textures from substance source. Depending on whatever textures you want to use, you don't have to use these stylized textures. But this is basically what I am going to be using. These are the textures that I've downloaded. They're actually quite nice. There's quite a bit of variety in here. So I'm going to use this I'm going to use this for the walls. I'm going to make it a bit more different than the other one. So with all my textures open, I'm just going to type in Stylized. And then I'm going to have a look for this ashlar floor, or whatever it's called. So you can now see it over here being loaded, which is fine. I think this size of the bricks is actually quite okay. We're going to take the concrete color and we can basically change it to something else. So I'm thinking maybe a darker, I don't know, something more magical and stylized. I don't know. Let's go for a sort of a teal type color. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Let's just see what sort of preset it's got. Cold gray. Come on. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a bit too dark, isn't it? So let's just go a bit lighter on it. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so this texture we're basically going to be using now. We'll copy it to the rest of them. So we do want to set this up correctly as intended. So we're going to open the shader settings over here, and then we've got displacement down here. Let's just move it to 0.02. never play with these settings. Don't go to an extreme because it will make your mesh explode. So right now, because we have not added any sort of tessellation, the scene moves okay. So once we start putting some subdivisions, you'll see how this is going to start affecting the performance, and it's already doing so. I think 0.02 is too much. Let's try 0.01. Yeah, that looks better. And you can see how it's basically destroying the geometry around here. And as we take these subdivisions down, it lowers that resolution. So I think around there should be fine. You have to find a balance between performance and, you know, whatever you want to do. The more, just understand, the more subdivisions you have on your mesh from where you generated this and imported it, the more this is going to affect your performance. So right now our mesh is not very, you know, full of geometry, not a lot of polygons, so it's working rather okay. Okay, so I think this height is okay. We can still play with the height over here if we want to. If we want to decrease it even more, you know, it's all about whatever you want to do. I'm just going to probably leave it around there. I like the way it looks. It looks and feels nice. Okay, I'm just going to copy this texture and I'm going to go to the rest of the meshes. And basically I'm going to paste it, and now we've got it across our entire tower. We've now got this added in, right? So I don't know if you can notice, but we've got a few problems over here. You can see that, right? So something about the UV map we haven't done correctly, and it's causing these problems. So if we go into Blender, which I've still got open, and we press Tab, we'll want to basically open ourselves a new, we'll want to open a new window and go to the UV editor. So we clearly have a problem in here. Something is basically touching incorrectly, or is too small, or something that's going on. Sorry, I don't want to add any loops. I just want to be in selection mode. So something is going on around here. I can't even see these meshes. So let's just take these subdivisions out entirely. And now we can have a look as to where this may have gone wrong. One of the things that we want to do is basically we want to select all of these faces in here, and we want to you know, play with the swift loop option again. It doesn't matter, sorry, not swift loop, with the Unwrap again. It doesn't matter that we've got more geometry on some of them and the others not. I mean, in terms of the displace and talking about displacement maps, that's hardly a concern at the minute. You can even, once you have the textures done correctly, you've got a displacement map generated properly, you can still tweak with the geometry if you want to. So I'm just trying to select all of these over here. I've got all of them selected, and I'm going to press U. So I don't think they were subdivided, unwrapped at all. So I'm just going to go to UV, and I'm going to say average inlands based on the scale, and then pack these islands inside here. So now if I select this one, I can clearly see it, right? So this should now be okay. We're just going to press Control S to save, and now we want to export this entire mesh again. So let's just make sure we've got the visibility of the modifier, file, export, FBX. You know, we'll replace that basically. Everything in here is already ticked. So we've exported the mesh again. We want to now go back into Substance Painter. Once this saves, and in Substance Painter it'll show you how to get your mesh. So basically we'll go to Edit, Project Configuration, and then we'll select the mesh again and press Open, and OK. So now basically Substance Painter will reload the mesh with whatever changes we made, and hopefully hopefully that will fix our errors. And lo and behold, it has. Yeah, so that's how you fix basically these problems. Okay, so now let's just move on with our texturing. We want to add a bit more fantasy-like effects to it, you know, make it look more nice, a little more pop. I'm thinking I'm going to make this in a sort of a violet color to contrast, that will actually work okay with the house itself. So we're just going to start doing that now. Okay, so let's just get this door out of the way. So we're on material 1, that's fine. And the way I did the door on the other tower is I basically went and took these boards from here and I dropped them on top. And as you can see, this doesn't look very nice. And I'm gonna add a black mask. And now with the black mask added, we'll press F1 on the keyboard, sorry. And we want to investigate, we want to find out which of these, basically, which of these is the door. So if we paint in, we can see that that's the door, which is fine. So Control Z to back that away. And what we want to do is we'll go to this polygon fill option, and then we'll select the UV island. And then when we press on this island, it will only populate that with the texture. So we're going to go back to our texture and we want to basically take its height, definitely get this height a lot lower. And then I want the scale of this to be maybe something like 10. Yeah, 10 is okay, just gives that nice pattern. So we've got now a pattern of the door. You know, on the other tower that I made, I didn't put a knob or anything in it, but you could potentially be doing, you know, do that if you want to. It's really up to you, whatever you decide. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Yeah, the door looks fairly nice. Okay, now for the fantasy look. So what I'm thinking is we want to add a lot more fantastical elements up here and in the middle. So let's just start with the middle for now. I'm going to drop in these crystals on top of my mesh, and you can see them over there. I think the size of them is quite okay, and I like how they come out, they protrude. I'm going to add a black mask. I'm going to go to my brush settings, and now I can basically brush them in if I want to. Let's just go to brushes and have a look if we've got some more interesting effects that we can add in. You know, make it more a lot nicer. I mean, the Photoshop brushes are going to add quite a bit of you know, quite a bit of effects on this. I am just going to paint this in like so. I'm just using a mouse. I'm not using any pen or anything of the sort. You can easily do this with a mouse. Again, it's all procedurally generated, so it's fine. Yeah, just have a look and see what, play around with it, see if you whatever you fancy to do. Again, I'm just gonna take some sort of a cracking effect and just drop it in there. And we can also activate, if we're going back on the texture, we can also activate emission if we want to. So we can do that. So now we can get it to glow. I think I would also sort of tone down the luminosity a little bit, so that's okay. And now let's go to, we'll copy this material and we're going to go to our top level. Is that the top level? No, this is the top level. And we're going to paste this in. And obviously we want to start painting it in a little bit. Again, it's all about whatever floats your boat to do. Just gonna add these sort of like you know, just like elements to it. I want to make it feel like it's really high fantasy type. Oh, sorry about that. Let's just go to our brush. What have I done? I've done something. I think I've added these brushes into my okay, let me just, can I please load a new brush in? I wonder if this happens on the other materials as well. Is this happening on the other materials? Yep. So I've done something to my brush basically. Yeah, I think it's over here. So I've got the spacing, I've got the flow. What is going on, guys? What have I done? Okay, seems to be back to normal now. Okay, right. We're back to our crystals and we want to play a bit more with them. So we can add some more crystals up here. What I'm thinking is we want something a bit more like that. Yeah, something like that. And maybe you want to add some different variations of color actually. So rather than adding some more crystals, I've just copy pasted that element there. We're going to clear the mask. So let's just paint a little bit in. Maybe with a smaller value. It just looks very placed, which I'm not particularly fond of. Yeah, something like that. And now we're gonna go to its color. We can change, to a light blue, which doesn't look very nice. Light violet crystal, light gray crystal. I don't really fancy these colors, to be honest. I want a bit more. I'm thinking maybe something like that. What do you guys think? Does it have? No, it's got a barf color, doesn't it? So yeah, let's just try with something like that. How does it look? Not too bad, not too bad. Do we want to add some more elements to this, I wonder? Do we want to have some more things happening? Well, one of the things that we could do is we can make these crystals pop out a lot more. So we can, the ones in the middle basically. So let's just right click this layer and add some levels. And then we'll change the levels to height. Oh, by the way, change the base, change the layer to height, and then make sure you got this on replace. So it basically replaces the height information from the bricks that we have. And now with the levels selected, we can start pulling some of these. You can see what's happening, right? As I pull this apart. Okay, yeah, just basically create a bit more tension into our crystals. Yeah, give them a bit more geometry. So I like that. Okay, right, and the same thing we may want to do with the bricks down here on the last layer. So again, let's just add some. Let's just add a levels. We'll change it to height, and we want to basically pull these out a little bit more, although it's affecting this too much. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to do a copy, paste. I'm going to take this height information out. We also, by the way, you can see the brick sticking out from the door. So again, I want to click the door and make sure we have this set on replace. And the only way that this will work is if you actually are on the height information of the layer. So now with these levels in, I can start playing with them. You can see what I'm doing as pulling it apart, yeah, which is fine. But now the stairs are basically destroyed. But this is why we can add a white mask. So we'll add a white mask, and then we can basically, with a hard brush, we can basically paint in the areas that we don't want affected by our massive sort of increase in height. Yeah, you can see that, right? Okay, so whatever, I think I'm gonna add a bit of, add a bit of softness to it, as it was. Change was too great. Yeah, something like that. Okay, and you can basically do this for every part of it. So for example, if you don't like the height information that you have in certain areas, you can just remove it if you want to. That's fine, by basically duplicating the layers and creating a bit more. Look at that. I can just simply come over here and just tell it to stop it with the height. I don't want the height over here. And this is how powerful these things are. That's why the displacement mapping on this looks, runs very, very nice. So depending on what you're looking for, you can basically put it in, or pull it out. Yeah, But this is how nice this is. You can see how the shape of the tower has changed quite a bit. Okay, so I think this will do basically with our tower, our basic example of the tower and what we were trying to achieve. I'm now going to basically move on to exporting these textures. So in order to do that, we'll just basically go up here to File, Export Textures, and then I've got my own setup over here called Blender. What is it now? Blender and Marmoset, and I'm getting all these maps out. As you can see, a display with emissive, roughness, height, AO. It's really up to you, whatever you want. If you want to create this on your own, you can find tutorials online. I might do a tutorial in the future. I have to set up one for Blender. That works very well. But I think, from here, most of these will work with Blender as well. You just got to have a bit of basic understanding of how this works. So we now want to basically export our texture. I've just got I'm just going to go over into this folder. So this is the folder where I've got my tower. So we're just going to say texture set 1, because we're going to have a set 2 where we're going to have to bake the ambient occlusion and other such things into this once the model is finished, and I'll show you that in just a bit. Okay, so I'm going to save it into this folder here. I'm going to press export, and I'll see you guys in just a bit after the export is done, and we'll bring our maps into Blender. So now this is all done. Every element has been added. This emission is definitely getting in the way though. So over here on the emission node, we're going to decrease that. And since we're also here talking about emissions, what I also want to do is I want to show you how to set it up. So basically, as you can see over here, I've got this emission going to a shader, and then the entire material over here going into this shader, being combined and then going into the material output. And this is the way to set up the emission over in Blender. And now I'm just going to go to the middle side, and I'm going to take this emission down a little bit. It's just way too strong. Right, okay, so this is basically our entire mesh. Now, deliberately, I haven't added a lot of height information at the middle and top level, just to show the contrast between the bottom and these areas here. Okay, I just really wanted you to see sort of the difference and how it can play. I mean, if you play with the settings in Substance Painter, you can get the same result to these other two levels, just like down here. They've all got the same settings anyway. Right, okay, so now moving forward, what we want to do is we now want to export what we've done so far. We want to transform our geometry into, our mesh into actual geometry to have these shapes. And then we want to go into Substance Painter and bake all the maps out. So let's just do that. I don't need this sort of this part here for now. What we want to do, let's start with the bottom again, and I'll show you basically how you can get the topology you want. So this is coming to the point where it will be a bit more time consuming when you do these things. The first thing you want to do is you want to apply, the first thing you actually want to do is you want to select all of these three meshes, and you want to export them as FBX, and we'll call them Tower High. So this is your high version of these. Yeah, make sure in geometry you've got apply modifiers. So we want to export these, and the reason why I want to export them as high is because we're going to use the information from this displacement, these meshes that are now displaced. We want to use the information from here to bake the ambient occlusion and any other maps that you may want, because maybe you don't want to stick with these textures that we added. Maybe you want to do different ones, but you do need that ambient occlusion and curvature and other such things if you're going to build some different kind of materials and substance on top of this. And this is why we're doing it. Now, once the export finishes, I'm also going to apply both of these modifiers over here, and then we'll move on from that to the next step, basically. So I'll see you in just a second. So we're now back into Blender, and we want to start adding our textures. We're going to start with the, basically the bottom of it. So we've got our stairs and we've got our walls. I'm just gonna basically go into, I'm gonna bring my folder over here where I've got the texture set up. So these are all the textures that we've got. we know that the bottom of our tower, if you go to the material, the material of the tower, we know there's material 11. This is why it was important, would have been important to rename the materials into actual, give them proper names. So this is material 11. This is basically it. And it's just a thing where you just drag and drop textures in. So I'm just gonna open a new side over here, and I'm gonna change this to shader editor and moved from world to object in case you're in world. I don't know why I was. Right, so we want to start bringing our textures in. Now, one of the things that you want to do, and luckily I've already got them made, is for example, in my house model over here, I've got, not the house, the ground. I've got all of these nodes already made, which I'm just basically gonna copy and paste them into my tower. See? So just to basically show you what these do, the first one is a setup for how to get, so this one over here is a setup of how to get your ambient occlusion and basic and color. But at this stage, we don't have any ambient occlusion. We will do later. So for the time being, we just need the base color. So that's not going to be of any use to us. This one is for metal and roughness, to combine them together. This one is for height and normal, and this one is for emissive. So let's just start bringing in the maps. We've got the color alpha, so I'm just gonna put that straight in there, as I don't need to do anything else with it. Gonna have there's no emissive for the bottom, so we don't need to do anything with that. We've got height information, metal smoothness, and the normal and the roughness. So I'm just going to start connecting these nodes. The metal, I'm going to put them over here. The roughness, I'm going to put it over here. And then both of these are going to go like that. The base color is connected already. We've got over here the height and the normal. Sorry, that's the height, that's the normal. So the height will go over in this node and the normal will go in this one. And then both of them will connect to the normal over here. And now you can see the effect, which is quite, it's not bad. Right, okay, so we've got all of that done. As I said, there's no emission and there's no ambient occlusion yet, so that's fine. But now we want to add our bumpiness to it. So how do we go about doing that? Well, first of all, we need to create a texture. So we're going to go over here. I've got this texture for my other maps, but it's fine. Basically when you come in here, you'll not see. You just see an empty place where you can press a button here to say new texture. So we're just going to press that button. So we've got it set up as texture 0.001. Now we're going to click this button over here. Sorry, not that button. We're going to click this button over here. And we will go into our folder where we've got our tower, which is over here. And over here. And we know we've got material 11 that we're looking for. And we're going to pick material 11 height. Double click that, and now the texture is loaded, and we don't need to do anything else over here. We're now going to go back to our modifiers for tower bottom, and we've got our subdivision in place, which is that's great. We'll click over here and we'll add a displace modifier on top, and this is what's going to happen. Now we're going to put our value to something like 0.05. And then we will go over here where it says texture. We'll click this button and we'll select texture 001. And now we've loaded the texture that we've made, but it's still not showing properly. So we're going to press the texture coordinates and we're going to select UV. And now it's basically matching the UV that we've just made. And this is the result. Now, some of the things that you may want to do is you want to play with the strength. So playing with the strength will basically add more geometry to the mesh, and you may want to go back into Substance Painter and have a look over here how much, because these values are not the same, but how much were you looking at? So 0.02 maybe is something that we looked at, but no, it was actually 0.01. So Substance Painter will always display this better. but that's also because we added a bit more geometry. So I'm just going to put this to 0.01. Sorry, not 1. I'm going to put it 0.1. That's more like it. Okay, so this will be probably the closest thing to what Substance Painter was showing us. And now we want to add a bit more geometry, and this is where our subdivision modifier comes in. So we'll basically press it to go to number 5, and then you'll see this entire mesh sort of improving its quality, and it's already done it a little bit. You can see that. You can see the sort of artifacts and so on have sort of disappeared a little bit. And we can go and we can do this even further. We can go to 6 subdivisions, and you're going to get a better result on it, and you'll just see it in just a minute. But the more you go, obviously, the more time you will consume basically waiting for these settings to come through. So I would definitely not recommend going too high, as I think it will sort of crash your system at some point. It's really all depending on the system that you've got. So now we're basically at 6 subdivisions, and the 6 wasn't that much of a difference between the 6 and the 5. So I'm just going to go back to 5. I think 5 is a better option for us. You can see how it changed just a little bit. Okay, so this is what we've got now in terms of the quality of the mesh. You know, I'm happy with it. If you basically, when you go back into Substance Painter, you can start editing some of these problems out if you want to, but that's really your you've got options. So now I'm just going to go and do the same thing for the whole tower, and I'll see you after every node has been connected. Okay, so the modifiers have been applied and the texture has been taken out of we've exported the meshes, the high poly meshes. Now I want to add a decimate modifier on top. And the decimation modifier will calculate for a second, and that will tell us that we've got 653,000 faces, which is quite high. If we activate the wireframe, this is basically how much we have. Now bear in mind that I'm actually running it with a very low subdivision level, so for more accuracy I would have been to somewhere around 2 million polygons. And this is where in the pipeline of this workflow you could actually bring ZBrush in, and you could use that to decimate the model a lot quicker than you can do with Blender. But again, it's all about your preferences really, and what tools you've got available. Right, so now we're going to tell it I want the ratio 0.1. So we'll see what happens when the decimation sort of finishes. I mean, in terms of the actual mesh itself, I'm not expecting any sort of major difference, but it's all about the poly count. I mean, how low do you want to take the poly count? And this amount is still way too much, so I'm just going to go to 0.05. Again, that might not be enough. I'm just going to basically play with the setting until I get the right amount that would suit my project's need. And once we do this, we have to do it for every other mesh in here. So that's still too high. And in terms of the mesh itself, yeah, we've taken a bit of a hit. And if you look at the wireframe now, it's a lot lower, but I think we can go even lower. It's all about how much of a hit you want to take in your geometry as you do this. So let's decimate all the models to a certain point, based on whatever you want, and then we'll move on to the next, which I call sort of almost final step. Okay, so now all 3 of our models have been decimated. If we activate wireframe, you can pretty much see it. Now, again, this is all really an option that you may want to go through. I generally don't decimate them this much because they basically now lost most of the geometry that we built. But you can easily use this now to retopologize if you want. You can do all sorts of things with the mesh in its current state, which I think is quite useful actually for people who really want to build up on this. Now we want to export the FBX of we call it the low poly level, and this export should be fairly straightforward and quick, I hope. No, it is. I mean, this process can be time consuming. If in terms of time consuming, what I mean by that is that you have to wait a little bit before everything gets done. But in reality, it's a lot quicker to achieve very nice results and meshes with this. So now we want to go up here. We've got the textures loaded already. You know, this is the same project that we've been working on so far. We're just going to go to Edit and Project Configuration, and we'll select our new poly option, which is the tower load that we just exported. And basically, this is what Substance Painter is showing us. And now it's reapplying all the textures that it had. So they're all pretty much applied. The only thing that you want to do is make sure you actually have no more height information in there, otherwise it will just destroy the mesh again. Okay, so this is basically what we have so far. And now we want to start baking some information. So I'm just going to take, for example, you know, material, the top, no, sorry, let's just take the bottom material, because I like the bottom a bit more. So the bottom over here, which want to do the AO and everything else. So we'll go to Edit, Bake Mesh Maps. We'll want a normal, ambient occlusion, maybe a curvature, depending on your needs. We'll do a 4K map on it. And then we'll take the tower high as our, you know, high poly model. And then we'll say match by mesh name. That should work just fine. And then anti-aliasing to whatever you want. I'm just going to put it 2 by 2. And then we'll press Bake Material Mesh Maps. And I'll see you after I've baked everything. So we can go one final time into Blender and bring our new textures in. And you know, we already have the low poly model now. I'll bring our new textures in, and then after that we can basically move on to, well, you know, that's it. It's a finished project basically, and you've successfully made a very quick stylized tower as a, you know, as a basic for your learning of this process. Okay, so now we've got our textures exported, all of the textures from Substance Painter as well, and we basically want to now go into Blender and bring our new textures in. So we already have the model, which is, you know, already it's got a very low amount of polygons after the decimation. So we got our, you know, we've just got to start deleting all the textures that we've added in before. And we need to bring the other textures that we've just exported out of Substance Painter. And these are the new sort of new textures that I've got. I'm just gonna drag this viewport, if only I can select it. Come on, like so. And right, so we want to bring in, you know, for the same materials, we want to bring in the ambient occlusion and the basically the ambient occlusion, the color, well, everything else really. So we're just going to start with the bottom like we did before. I'm just going to drop these in. So as you will see now, we don't have an emission. I'm going to add emission over here. I'm also going to add an add shader. I'm going to put over here. We want our material to connect over in this bit, the emissive to connect over in this bit. Sorry, we don't have an emission on this map, have we? Sorry, that's fine, don't worry, it doesn't really matter. We're just going to have to make sure that this doesn't go anywhere really for this particular mesh. So we're bringing our base color over here, we're bringing our ambient occlusion in the color ramp. This over here has to go into specular, and this one has to go into base color. So see, in this tutorial you've also learned how to set up the ambient occlusion and the you know, the ambient occlusion on this. So if you basically play with this, you can see how we're adding more ambient occlusion to the scene, which, you know, generally for stylized look it can actually do wonders. So we'll bring in the rest of the of our meshes, you know, height, normal, smoothness. In our case, we don't really need to bring a lot of other things in because we've already got most of the features of the textures already in place. But you know, for a bit of added realism, well, not realism, but more accuracy, you do want to bring everything in. So that's that one finished. We'll move on to the middle, where again I want to delete all these files. And so ambient occlusion, color, this time we have an emissive, which is fine. We've got height, metal, normal, and roughness. Okay, so I've done this so many times before that I basically know these by heart, so that's why I move so quickly through them. Sorry, not the base color. You have to put this into the specular, and this goes into the base color. If we don't connect the submissive map, we won't be able to see anything. So that's done there. We want the normal, and this is the height. We want the height in there, and again that needs to connect to our normal. We want our metallic to connect as well, and we want our roughness. And now this is done as well. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference between the bottom part of the mesh and the one above, just because the one the bottom has more geometry. And now we want to do the top. So ambient occlusion, base color. To be honest, it was a bit of a poor choice of colors at the top there. Can't say I'm too happy with it. So again, you want to go through all of these. Make sure you got an emissive already set up. Otherwise you won't be able to see anything until you do. Oh, I think I misplaced these. Yeah, okay. Oh, and one other thing that you need to do for these meshes, which I haven't done in before, which is actually quite a mistake on my part, is you want to set the metallic and roughness to actual non-colored data rather than colored data. So where is that specular? Right. Okay, so we've got in there. Yeah, so this over here from sRGB to non-color. So that will make it more accurate, basically. It's basically the way they should be set up. I mean, in this case, it doesn't really affect it that much because we don't really have we don't have metal or anything like that in the scene, but under normal circumstances it would. So now we've got our entire mesh sort of connected. We can now start bringing our other items into place. So let me just see. I've got the collection 2 over here, which for some reason is not showing up. Oh, it's not visible. So now everything is visible. Basically, this will take a bit of time for Blender to recalculate, and especially once we move into the shaded view, which I will do in a second. So I'll see you guys in 2 minutes. So we are now in our our shaded view, our render view actually. We've got a camera set up and you can see basically the scene. Now there's some weird artifacting happening over there, and that's because our clipping is not set high enough. So it's over here in the view panel. You want to basically increase the end to, I don't know, say 10,000, and for some reason that didn't do much. I'm sure there was, oh no, sorry, because I'm in a camera, the camera has its own clipping settings. So I'm pretty sure it's actually somewhere in here. Yep, there it is. So we want to set up this to a lot further away. This is maximum, isn't it? So why is it not showing me this? Oh, right, this is a problem with some sort of a shadow that we've got. Okay, so it wasn't the clipping, it's actually a shadow problem. I believe it's from the spotlights that I've got. It's basically I need some more shadows to shed some light really over on you can see as I move this, it's basically, yeah, okay, well that's fine. We may want to sort of play with this a little bit. We're trying to. I mean, we've got quite a nice shadow in there, but it's clearly. I mean, the shadow resolution isn't too high. You may want to go into your render and basically play with that. So go to change the cube size to something more. You can see how that's improved it a little bit, and then the cascade. Well, the cascade hasn't really done much. So we may want you may want to play with the render settings over at this point to basically get the best result out of it. But you know, basically the way you set this up, you'll get a better result, or a you know, a nicer result. Or you can see that basically there I've got quite a hard shadow coming from this from this spotlight. So I'm just gonna set it up this way. Right, let's go back into view, camera, active camera. This is what our camera is seeing right now, basically. So you want to play around with the settings and get your scene set up properly. I've got I've basically got over here, I do have a in the world shader, I do have a texture that I can add. So environment texture, and then I'm just gonna press open. I'm sure I've got it over in here somewhere. What was it called now? I think it was called, God, I can't find it actually. Oh yeah, there it is. Right, so I've got this texture that I can connect, and we'll go back to 3D viewport. This will take a bit for it to actually come through, and Blender does tend to sort of slow down on these things, especially when the scenes are a bit too large. So once that loads in, basically this is what we get. Let's just deactivate some of these options, and this is basically our render. I mean, you can play with the camera now to basically get a better angle, but if you know, this is a texture taken off of HDRI Heaven, and I just went into Photoshop and sort of applied the filter to it just for the sake of getting a nicer sort of render out. I hope you guys like it. Anyway, so I hope you guys learned something new in this tutorial. You know, I'm not doing any sort of animations in this. I might do in the future. Please let me know in the comment section below if you want me to. If you guys have any question about this process, please feel free to ask. I'm still developing the workflow, but so far I'm quite happy with what I've got. It works wonderful with stylized assets, and I think it can run very well even with other more realistic textures, or you know, as long as you go for a procedural look to everything, then this is going to be quite easy to achieve and use. So if you guys have learned something, please like and subscribe to my channel, and you know, to keep it building up, because I will be releasing more and more tutorials, and the quality of these tutorials will improve over time, more and more gradually as I progress through my workflows as well. So thank you guys again for watching, and have a nice day, and yeah, you know, stay safe. Thank you. Bye.